Shalom, welcome to Tactically Torah. I am Heath Hayes. Today is day 93 of Read the Bible in a Year, and we are in 2 Samuel chapter 5. We're going to read chapters 5 through 8. So let's get started. And all the tribes of Israel came to David at Hebron and spoke, saying, "Look, we are your bone and your flesh. Formerly, when Saul was sovereign over us, you were the one who had led Israel out and brought them in. And Yahweh said to me, shepherd my people, Israel, and be ruler over Israel. And all the elders of Israel came to the sovereign at Hebron, and the sovereign David made a covenant with them at Hebron before Yahweh, and they anointed David sovereign over Israel. David was 30 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned for 40 years. In Hebron he reigned over Judah 7 years and 6 new moons. And in Jerusalem he reigned 33 years over all Israel and Judah. And the sovereign and his men went to Jerusalem against the Jebusites and the inhabitants of the land, and they spoke to David, saying, except you take away the blind and the lame, you are not going to come in here, thinking David is not going to come in here. But David captured the stronghold of Sion and the city of David. And David said on that day, anyone who strikes the Jebusites, let him go by the way or by the water shaft, and take the lame and the blind who are hated by David's being. That is why they say the blind and the lame do not come into the house. And David dwelt in the stronghold and called it the city of David. And David built around from Millo and inward. And David went on and became great, and Yahweh Elohim of hosts was with him. Now Hiram, sovereign of Sor, sent messengers to David, and cedar trees and carpenters and masons, and they built a house for David. And David knew that Yahweh had established him as sovereign over Israel, and that he had exalted his reign because of his people Israel. And David took more concubines and wives from Jerusalem after he had come from Hebron, and more sons and daughters were born to him. And these were the names of those born to him in Jerusalem: Shammua, and Shobab, and Nathan, and Shlomo, and Yibar, and Elishua, and Nepheg, and Yaphiah, and Elishama, and Eliada, and Eliphelet. And the Philistines heard that they had anointed David sovereign over Israel, and all the Philistines went up to search David. But David heard and went down to the stronghold. And the Philistines came and spread themselves out in the valley of Rephaim. And David inquired of Yahweh, saying, do I go up against the Philistines? Do you give them into my hand? And Yahweh said to David, go up, for I shall certainly give the Philistines into your hand. And David came to Baal Perazim, and David struck them there, and he said, Yahweh has broken through my enemies before me like a breakthrough of water. So he called the name of that place Baal Perazim. And they left their images there, and David and his men took them away. And the Philistines again came up and were spread out in the valley of Rephaim. And when David inquired of Yahweh, he said, do not go up. Turn around behind them, and you shall come upon them in front of the mulberry trees. And it shall be, when you hear the sound of stepping in the tops of mulberry trees, then act promptly, for then Yahweh shall go out before you and strike the camp of the Philistines. And David did so, as Yahweh commanded him, and smote the Philistines from Geba as far as Gezer. Hydration. And chapter 6. Now David said, gathered all chosen men of Israel, 30,000. And David rose up and went with all the people who were with him from Baali, Yehuda, to bring up from there the ark of Elohim that is called by the name Yahweh of hosts, who dwells between the cherubim. And they placed the ark of Elohim on a new wagon and brought it from the house of Abinadab, which was on a hill. And Uzzah and Ahio, sons of Abinadab, were leading the new wagon. And they brought it from the house of Abinadab, which was on the hill, with the ark of Elohim, and Ahio was walking before the ark. And David and all the house of Israel were dancing before Yahweh with all instruments of fir wood, and with lyres, and with harps, and tambourines, and the sistrums, and with cymbals. And when they came to the threshing floor of Nikon, Uzzah reached out toward the ark of Elohim and took hold of it, for the oxen stumbled. And the wrath of Yahweh burned against Uzzah, and Elohim struck him there for the fault, and he died there by the ark of Elohim. And David was displeased because Yahweh had broken out against Uzzah, and he called the name of the place Peretz Uzzah until this day. And David was afraid of Yahweh on that day, and said, how shall the ark of Yahweh come to me? And David would not move the ark of Yahweh with him into the city of David, but David turned it aside to the house of Obed-Edom the Gittite. And the ark of Yahweh remained in the house of Obed-Edom the Gittite 3 new moons, and Yahweh blessed Obed-Edom and all his house. And it was reported to sovereign David, saying, Yahweh has blessed the house of Obed-Edom and all that he has, because the ark of Elohim. David then went up and brought the ark of Elohim from the house of Obed-Edom to the city of David with rejoicing. And it came to be, when those bearing the ark of Yahweh had gone 6 steps, that he slaughtered bulls and fatted sheep. And David danced before Yahweh with all his might, and David was wearing a linen shoulder garment. Thus David and all the house of Israel brought up the ark of Yahweh with shouting and with a voice of a shofar. And it came to be, when the ark of Yahweh came into the city, that Michal, daughter of Saul, looked through a window and saw sovereign David leaping and dancing before Yahweh, and she despised him in her heart. So they brought the ark of Yahweh in, and set it in its place in the midst of the tent that David had pitched for it. And David brought ascending offerings before Yahweh and peace offerings. And when David had finished bringing ascending offerings and peace offerings, he blessed the people in the name of Yahweh of hosts. And he apportioned to all the people, to all the crowd of Israel, from man even to a woman, to each one a loaf of bread and a measure and a cake of raisins, and all the people left, each one to his house. And David returned to bless his household, and Michal, the daughter of Saul, came out to meet David and said, how esteemed was the sovereign of Israel today, uncovering himself today in the eyes of the female servants of his servants, as one of the foolish ones shamefully uncovers himself. So David said to Michal, before Yahweh, who chose me instead of your father and all his house, commanded me to be ruler over the people of Yahweh, over Israel, so I dance before Yahweh. And I shall be even more slight than this, and shall be humble in my own eyes. But as for this female servants of whom you have spoken, by them I am esteemed. And Michal, the daughter of Saul, had no children to the day of her death. Wow. Chapter 7. And it came to be, when sovereign was dwelling in his house, When the sovereign was dwelling in his house, and Yahweh had given him rest from all his enemies all around, that the sovereign said to Nathan the prophet, "See now, I am dwelling in a house of cedar, but the ark of Elohim dwells with curtains." One moment. I had to let the dog out. Sorry. Verse 3, chapter 7, verse 3. And Nathan said to the sovereign, "Go, do all that is in your heart, for Yahweh is with you." And it came to be that night that the word of Yahweh came to Nathan, saying, "Go and say to my servant David, thus said Yahweh, would you build a house for me to dwell in? For I have not dwelt in a house since the time that I brought the children of Israel up from Mitzrayim, even to this day, but have moved about in a tent and in a dwelling place, wherever I have walked with all the children of Israel. And have I ever spoken a word to anyone from the tribes of Israel, whom I commanded to shepherd my people Israel, saying, why have you not built me a house of cedar? And now say to my servant David, thus said Yahweh of hosts, I took you from the pasture, from following the flock, to be ruler over my people, over Israel. And I have been with you wherever you have gone, and have cut off all your enemies from before you, and have made you a great name, like the name of the great ones who are on the earth. And I shall appoint a place for my people Israel, and shall plant them, and they shall dwell in the place of their own. No longer be afraid, neither shall the children of wickedness oppress them again, as at the first. Even from the day I commanded rulers over my people Israel, and have caused you to rest from all your enemies, and Yahweh has declared to you that he would make you a house. When your days are filled and you rest with your fathers, I shall raise up your seed after you, who comes from your inward parts, and shall establish his reign. He does build a house for my name, and I shall establish the throne of his reign forever. I am to be his father, and he is my son. If he does perversely, I shall reprove him with the rod of men, and with the blows of the sons of men. But my loving commitment does not turn aside from him, as I turned it aside from Saul, whom I removed from before you. And your house and your reign are to be steadfast forever before you. Your throne is established forever. According to all these words and according to all this vision, so Nathan spoke to David. And the sovereign went in and sat before Yahweh, and he said, Who am I, O Master Yahweh, and what is my house that you have brought me this far? And yet this was a small matter in your eyes, O Master Yahweh. And you have also spoken of your servant's house for a great while to come. And is this the Torah of man, O my Master Yahweh? And what more does David say to you? For you, Master Yahweh, know your servant, because your word and according to your own heart you have done all this greatness to make it known to your servant. You are great indeed, O Master Yahweh, for there is none like you. There is no Elohim but you, according to all that we have heard with our ears. And who is like your people, like Israel, the one nation on the earth whom Elohim went to ransom for himself as a people, to make for himself a name, and to do for you greatness and awesome deeds for your land before your people, whom you ransomed out for yourself from Mitzrayim, from the nations and the mighty ones. And you have established for yourself your people, Israel, as your own people forever. And you, Yahweh, have become their Elohim. And now, O Yahweh Elohim, the word which you have spoken concerning your servant and concerning his house. Establish it forever, and do as you have said. And let your name be made great forever, saying, Yahweh of hosts is the Elohim of Israel. And let the house of your servant David be established before you. For you, O Yahweh of hosts, the Elohim of Israel, have revealed this to your servant, saying, I build you a house. And therefore your servant has taken heart to pray this prayer to you. And now, O Master Yahweh, you are Elohim, your words are true, and you have spoken this goodness to your servant. And now be pleased to bless the house of your servant to be before you forever. For you, O Master Yahweh, have spoken it, and with your blessing, let the house of your servant be blessed forever. Chapter 8. And after this it came to be that David struck the Philistines and humbled them, and David took the bridle of the mother city out of the hand of the Philistines. He also struck Moab and measured them off with a line, causing them to lie down on the earth. With 2 lines he measured off those to be put to death, and with 1 complete line those to be kept alive. And the Moabites became David's servants and brought presents. So basically what he did was he was taking out people over a certain height. So he laid 2 lines on the ground and had every man lay in between those lines, feet at one line and head at the other line. And any man whose head went beyond the headline, they were killed. Nephilim, right? You know, basically taking out any potential impure blood. So that's what's going on there. Where are we at? The last portion of verse 2. And the Moabites became David's servants and brought presents. David also struck Hadadezer, son of Rehob, sovereign of Sobah, as he went to restore his rule at the river Euphrates. And David captured from him 1,700 horsemen and 20,000 foot soldiers. And David destroyed all the chariots, but left of them 100 chariots. And the Arameans of Damasek came to help Hadadezer, sovereign of Sobah, and David struck 22,000 of the Arameans. Then David put watch posts in Aram of Damascus, and the Arameans became David's servants and brought presents, and Yahweh saved David wherever he went. And David took the shields of gold which were on the servants of Hadadezer, and brought them to Jerusalem. And from Betah and from Berothai, cities of Hadadezer, sovereign David took very much bronze. And Toi, sovereign of Hamath, heard that David had stricken all the army of Hadadezer. So Toi sent Joram his son to sovereign David to ask for peace of him and bless him, because he had fought against Hadadezer and struck him. For Hadadezer had battles with Toi, and Joram brought with him objects of silver and objects of gold and objects of bronze. Sovereign David also set these apart to Yahweh, along with the silver and the gold that he had set apart from all the nations which he had humbled, from Aram and from Moab and from the children of Ammon and from the Philistines and from Amalek and from the spoil of Hadadezer, son of Rehob, sovereign of Sobah. And David made a name for himself when he returned from striking 18,000 Arameans in the Valley of Salt. And he put watchposts in Edom. Throughout all Edom he put watchposts. And all the Edomites became David's servants. And Yahweh saved David wherever he went. And David reigned over all Israel. And David was doing right ruling and righteousness to all his people. And Joab, son of Zeruiah, was over the army. And Jehoshaphat, son of Ahilud, was the recorder. And Zadok, son of Ahitub, and Ahimelech, son of Abiathar, were the priests. And Seraiah was the scribe. And Benaiah, son of Jehoiada, was over both the Kerethites and the Pelethites, and David's sons were priests. All right. So